because there's no way I was going to go up and sort of like, oh, here, I'm going to take this trophy from Megannety, because they wouldn't let him up, because they wouldn't let the crowd over the barrier or something. And I remember pointing down, and I could see him down there, and he had a big disappointed head on his shoulders.
Neil Megannety, welcome to Throwing Stones. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Jeremy. Firstly, thanks very much for asking me on, because it's an honour. I've listened to the other podcasts, and they were great over the lockdown and everything. It's delighted that you're keeping it going. So, and thanks very much for asking me. It's an honour. I don't necessarily know what I'm going to add to it all, but sure, we'll wait and see.
No, absolutely delighted to have you here. Hopefully your knees hold up for the 40 minutes we're talking.
No, they probably go down with something or other full of hamstrings.
All right, we have Victor on standby. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
And very nice of you to join us from your sauna as well.
Oh yeah, it's not on, so it's a bit cold.
Listen, I'm really excited to talk to you today. You're the first person in a generation to captain the club 3 years in a row. I can't wait to talk about that and a whole lot more things. But tell me, first of all, how did you get involved in Greystones Rugby Club?
I got involved just like as in my family, I suppose, were involved in rugby. My two older brothers had gone through Greystones. I was local. It was down the road. I think it was always probably something that I was going to do. My own kids now are down there playing, and so from the age of, I think I was 6 when I went down first to play for. I might have even been 5 because I joined a year younger, and I joined a year above me, and it was just like a natural thing to do, to go down and play rugby. I remember it was Tim Harnett who was the head of the junior section down there, and one of my first memories is of Tim shoving me onto the pitch to go and join whatever team it was that I was going out to join. So yeah, that's how I got involved. Mum brought me down, and away I went.
Were you on the Hugh Cahill under-8 Invincibles?
Well, Hugh, I was looking at it. There's a picture in one of the programs that you gave me, and Hugh Cahill with the Invincibles, they were a year above me.
Okay.
And so I played with them for the first year, and then I stayed with my own age group then for the second year. So in that photograph, Hugh's not in that photograph. I think he might have joined a few years later. And it was myself and Nabil who were the two young guys who we stayed back with our own age group, Nabil McNaughton. And but yeah, they called themselves the Invincibles and all that sort of stuff, but they probably weren't. I'm sure there was a loss in there somewhere, A few of the other lads on the team would say the same thing. Yeah, Conor McNaughton, I think, was on that team with the Flynners and Mick Harnett and Brian O'Donnell and a few of them. No, they were really good team. But
hey, tell me about the Flynn twins. Like to my generation, they're the happy pair, but to a whole other generation, they're rugby players, the Greystones rugby players. Like, what were they like as athletes?
As athletes, supreme athletes. That's what they were. They still are. I think it was Dave not speaking recently about how he has his body percentage is that of an Olympic athlete or something like that. At 3 or 4%. They were outstanding at everything that they did, the Flynns. So they were outstanding rugby players, golfers, everything that they did, they were really, really good at. So they played rugby, I think, up until under 20s. And Dave, I think, was playing seniors for a year or two, and then they packed it in. But really, really good. Really, really good players, yeah.
There's an idea for guests on the show one day.
Absolutely, yeah. They're the podcast at the moment anyway. They've got loads of interesting guests on their own podcast.
That's right, yeah. The 1990s was arguably the most successful period for the club, for the seniors anyway. Growing up, I would have heard about Nick Popwell, Spud Murphy, Peter Muller, and it creates kind of an aura about the club. But your brother Victor was living that period. What was it like for you going down to watch him play in AIL Division 1 against all the top internationals in the country? Did it create the same kind of intoxication with Greystones Rugby Club as it would have with Mise?
Yeah, absolutely. It was an amazing time, that time with AIL. I don't think there was, I can't speak of what it was like before that. Obviously, I wasn't around, but I would think that it was a real purple patch for the AIL. There wasn't a time like it beforehand, and there wasn't a time like it afterwards. So since the game went professional, it sort of was the end of the club game, as it was in the 90s anyway, with the crowds. And I know other people who on your podcast have spoken about it before. Spud did, and KV and Sav, they all talked about it. It was bizarre, because it was just, there's thousands upon thousands of people down in the rugby club, down in Greystones. KV talked about how the cars were going all the way back down, almost parked up to the main street in Greystones, and he used to get off a train and he'd hear the crowd. But you could, if you were walking on the beach or something, you'd hear the crowd in the rugby club. And trying to get in was a nightmare, because the traffic going up to the rugby club was just mayhem. And then there's a great picture. It used to be in the hallway going up the stairs in Greystones. I think it might be Ian Sherwin passing a ball from a ruck, and you see the crowd in the terrace behind, and it's 6 or 7 deep or whatever it is, like that. And that's the way it was for the matches. But you had people, both sides. If you had a Shannon or a Gary Owen coming up from Munster to play against Greystones, Cork Con, you'd have a bunch of internationals on both sides. 1 week they'd be playing for Ireland, and the following week they'd be playing for their clubs. And you'd only have 200 or 300 people playing 200 or 300 spectators going to watch a Leinster or Lynch provincial game or something like that. Where it was at the club scene. So going down there was amazing. The atmosphere and the buzz and everything else was just unbelievable. And yeah, my brother was playing on that team as well. So you had everybody knows what team it was: Poppy, Spud, and Rigneys, and everybody else. You had even just slightly before that, you would have had Tony Ward and Tony Doyle and everything else like that in the back line. So it was, you sort of grew up with all these, you took it for granted almost that that's the way it was going to be. And Greystones was going to have this train of internationals playing from them week in, week out. But with along came professionalism, and unfortunately the club game died a death. But it was amazing times, yeah.
Your brother Victor gets it's a lot of airtime in the club, but you have another brother, Shaw, as well. Tell me a bit about him.
Yeah, so my brother Shaw, he was involved in those squads as well, back in the day with the AILs. The amount of people who will come up to me and say about how talented Shaw was, and if he took it more seriously, that he could have gone all the way and all that sort of stuff. So I would have grown up with the two of them, watching both of them playing. Shaw's a guard, and Shaw played for the Guards for years as well, and I'd go out with him as well to Westminstown and watch some of his matches out there. So yeah, the two of them, I grew up with them playing down in Greystones, and so my life on a weekend would be watching either Saturday or Sunday rugby, be it out in Westminstown or down in Greystones.
Can't beat it. Yeah. You go to school in St. Michael's, and you'd be part of the SET squad. When you leave school, though, curiously, you decided to stop playing rugby, and it wasn't until the second year of under-20s that you finally did decide to take it up again. What happened to make you stop playing, and why did you actually come back?
Really happened. It's an interesting thing that from school, that squad that we would have had, and we had a talented squad as well in school. Only 3 or 4 people, I think, went on to play rugby, and they were, I as far as I'm aware, I think there was maybe 4 people who went on to play rugby, 3 of whom I think were associated with Greystones. So you would have had Gerard Cleary, who was a captain, Fiacre Baines, who was there, and myself. So that was 3 people out of 4 or 5 maybe who ended up playing senior rugby at least. And I think it's maybe a sad reflection on the schools game that more people don't continue on to play with their clubs once they finish. But I suppose that there was nothing that happened. Essentially, I wasn't that interested in going down and playing for the 20s. I played Vincent Byrne at the time, got me down to play some of the junior rugby for the cup run, which was really good. And then the following year, Bubbles, it got me involved in the 20s. But Yeah, the cup, like, as you know, and Vincent was great for that as well, just making sure that you didn't go down another path, like totally lose track and go off and never play the game again. And Vincent would always reel you back in and go, Neil, we've got a game coming up on whatever night and we want to get you involved. So that was it. And in fact, I actually played with Bubbles that year in a cup run as well. And there was all these old fellas that I was going down and playing with. But it was just hilarious playing with all of them. Like, Bubbles was brilliant playing with, and as a coach as well. We had a line out. We were playing a match against Clontarf out in Clontarf, and we had a line out, and Bubbles was throwing the ball in as a hooker, and he was given the call or whatever it was, XYZ 1 2 3, and someone down the back goes, I can't hear you, Bubbles, and he's like, XYZ 1 2 3, and someone else goes, where? Don't know what that call is, Bubbles. Bubbles goes, for fuck's sake, it's going to 4 straight up. And he just throws the ball in. Everyone cracking out laughing on the pitch.
Yeah, I can imagine Bubbles saying that, all right.
Yeah. But if I go back to the AIL days as well, in relation to like all the crowds and the atmosphere and all that sort of stuff, like, I've talked about it amongst a group of our friends who would have been all the same age, going down and watching it, and like we all sort of say the same thing, that it was unbelievable and it was amazing, and it's just never, it's never, ever since it ended, it just never came back. It sort of like ended really, really quickly. So you went from having thousands upon thousands of people going down watching the club game, it going out on TV and all that sort of stuff, and it's stopping. But I was over in Edinburgh on a stag party, and I was in a chipper at like around 2 o'clock in the morning, and this guy jumps in front of me in the queue, and I was with another guy who was beside me, but this guy jumps in front of me in the queue, and I thought I knew him from somewhere. I was just like, I know you from somewhere. It was 2:30 in the morning, so I was probably, had a few drinks, a little bit worse for wear. But I said to him, I said, I know you from somewhere. Are you from Greystones, by chance? Are you Irish something? And he turns around, he looks at me, and he sort of like, the penny dropped. It was Mick Bradley, the old Irish scrum half.
Wow. Yeah.
And the penny dropped with me then when he looked at me, like, the penny dropped, and I went, oh Jesus, what a fool am I? And I went, oh, Mick Bradley, how's it going? How are you doing? And I kind of turned around, and he turned around, and then I just sort of said, I had a bit of Dutch courage. I said, by the way, Mick, I said, I remember being the age of 10 and 8 or 9 or 10 or something. I was really young, and I remember you playing a match up in Greystones in Dr. Hickey Park. I said, I was a ball boy, and I remember you warming up with Ralph Keys. So it just shows you, like, Cork Con, they had Mick Bradley playing 9, Ralph Keys playing 10, who were I think at the time, they were both the 9 and 10 playing for Ireland. And then on the Greystones team, you would have had all your internationals in the pack. And I think it was at the time when Peter Muller was playing as well. But anyway, when I struck up this conversation with Mick Bradley in the chipper at 2 o'clock, he turns back around to me, and he goes, I remember that match. Greystones had a great crowd. You had thousands down there watching those games. Yeah. And we really remember you had a great pack, and you started listing out the pack, and he goes, you had Poppy, you had Spud, you had Des Rigney, you had Brian Rigney. There was a guy called Boyd as well. You had Peter Muller playing for you. So he was going through all the team for me, instead of me going on about how great Greystones were, it was him telling me. And he just remembered it really fondly as well. So we had this conversation together, and then shared a bag of chips outside and still going on about rugby. He was coaching the Edinburgh team at the time, the professional unit. So that's why he was over there. But that was it was nice to hear it from him, and his perspective, and how he thought about Dr. Hickey Park and the atmosphere and everything else.
Yeah, nice to know it's not just us, but that it's kind of universally recognised as being a unique time for the club.
Yeah, and from someone like him who was
experienced everything.
Yeah.
After your under-20s finished up, it wouldn't be too long before you break into the senior squad. Who were the kind of established second rows at the time, and how did you assimilate into the team as a young lad?
So with the 20s, we had a good 20s side. So Rob Connolly and all those guys, and Dave McKechnie, Stu O'Connell, who we all would have gone up from the 20s up to the seniors. Rob and Stu and Dave and all those guys were a year younger than I was. And myself, Dan Crean and Nabil would have been, and Neil O'Brien, a few of those kind of guys. We all went up onto the senior, trying to break through onto the seniors the following year after we finished 20s. But we had a good, strong 20s side. We got to the quarterfinals, I think, of the Macquarie Cup, and we should have. We ended up getting an unlucky draw whereby I think we beat all the teams in our league and everything, but we got an unlucky draw where we got drawn against UCD and lost narrowly to them in Belfield, and they went on to walk the cup. But after 20s, and I really enjoyed my 20s year, I played. Bubbles was our coach, and Bubbles was the one who got me down. He gave me a phone call before the season and sort of said, look, we'd be delighted if you come down. And I went down, and right from the first training session with Bubbles, it was just great fun, you know. Bubbles, I thought, and I'm sorry, maybe Bubbles doesn't get enough credit, but technically he was a really good coach as well, you know, in terms of the line-outs and everything else like that. He was really good, but he just allowed you to go out and play, and he was just also really good crack. So it was always really good fun, our 20s side. But when I finished 20s and trying to get into the senior team, we had this I didn't get into the senior team straight away. I was on the senior squad straight away off 20s, and then we had this really good J1 side that none of the guys, it was all a really young side. So it was the guys who came up off 20s, and a lot of the guys a year above me who had been on the under 20s the year above me. And it was a really enjoyable J1 team to play on. And we were all striving to get onto the senior team, I suppose. We eventually, I got a break where we were playing a match down in Water Park, and I remember it was the first time I'd been selected on the squad, and I was on the bench, and the guy, there was a second row, Trevor Ashmore. Do you remember Trevor Ashmore?
No.
Trevor Ashmore was the second row who was playing. He was from Enniscorthy, I think, down in Wexford anyway, and Trevor got injured. He got concussed, and I remember he got concussed, and he didn't have a rashes where he was. He was walking around down at a different end of the field, and I remember going, you know, looks, he's gone. I'm coming on, and I came on in that match, and I played quite well, and that was my foot in the door. But Spud was somebody who I had grown up with, watching, you know, in that AIL teams, and that, like, Spud just, and I love listening to his podcast and telling his stories about him playing and everything else like that. But Spud would have been the idol, you know, for all of our age group growing up. He was just Greystones through and through, and just an unbelievable rugby player. And then to have him as a coach then when I was breaking into the senior team, and for him to give me the leg up or the in to get into the senior team was really good. And I found him really good from a motivational point of view as well. Just the fact that he would say things to you as well in terms of what your strengths were and everything else, and to hear it coming from someone like Spud at that time was absolutely amazing. So I really appreciated Spud as a coach. And once I got in onto the team, then I was in, and I think Spud then, you know, I had a good relationship with him as a coach as well, so it was really good. But we had this really, really good team, and we used to throw the ball around in the pack. We'd throw the ball around. We also knew how to, like, as in we were coming up against some grizzly and teams, going out and beating them, and like in really tough matches. And then towards, I think it was the second half of the season, is when I made a bit of a breakthrough and got on to the side. But I was happy playing on that J1 side because they were playing it was all a group of young guys, and we were all playing really nice rugby that I really enjoyed playing on that J1 side for that half of the season. And then I made the breakthrough onto the seniors.
2003, 2004, if we just jump ahead a couple of seasons, is a time I want to ask you about. It's Greg Lynch's first full year in charge. I was speaking with Gus O'Hanlon a couple of days ago, and he was telling me how in 10 years previously, 94, 95, Greg had joined as a J1's coach. And he brings in flip charts and green zones and red zones. The pitch is divided into ABC. You know, every player from 1 to 15 has a role. Completely revolutionised how rugby was coached and played down at Greystones. And sure enough, they win the Met Cup. The next season, they win the league. Did you have any similar experiences like that with Greg? Did he bring anything cutting edge into Greystones when he took over as head coach?
Yeah. Well, it's funny that us will say that about Greg doing that with flip charts and everything else like that. I remember when Greg came in and coached me, he certainly gave you a lot of direction in what he wanted you to do on the pitch, both, you know, as a collective, but also as an individual. But in terms of like what he might have brought in, like revolutionized it, it was what I loved was he would, Greg would give me videos of opposition lineouts. And, you know, I'd study the opposition lineouts. So that's going back to 2003 when technology wasn't like it is today. So, like, you know, and I think like he might have had to go to another club and sort of say, can I have a video of you would have played Clonakilty last week, or you would have played, you know, Blackrock the week before. Can I get that tape from you? And he would then give me the tape and I'd be able to say, or he'd get someone to even edit down the lineouts and I'd be able to study the lineouts for the opposition. And it worked really well. I'd study the opposition lineouts and I was doing really well in terms of poaching balls and everything else like that. So in terms of him bringing something else or something different, that I'd definitely say that's one thing that he did, along with a lot of other things. But yeah, certainly for me with the lineouts, that was brilliant.
In 2004, it's been well documented. Greystones finished second in the leagues. Trent didn't get promoted from Division 3, but the IRFU did introduce an AIL Cup between first, second, third, and fourth. Greystones get to the final of that competition against Ards. KV, who's club captain, is injured for the final. And in a team with some pretty experienced characters like Collie McEntee, for example, Greg picks you to captain the team in KV's absence. Must have been a pretty special honour for you. And worth noting, you're only 22.
Yeah, was I 22? Yeah, it was certainly was. Yeah, I found it daunting as well. So there's a few senior people in there as well. But Greg obviously saw that generally speaking, it was a young side. And he probably saw that, you know, this is the future of the team, you know, for the next few years. And I'd say he was looking at it from that perspective. I would also say that, like, you know, and that was the great thing about the club and the team and the players that we were with. Any of those senior guys who you're playing with, like Katie and Colin McDeely and Murphy was there. You know, they probably understood that I was a sort of a young person coming in to captain the team for the first time, and they would also take leadership roles as well, though, you know, so the burden was shared to a large extent as well. But yeah, Greg probably saw it as being, you know, this is the team for the next good few years, so let's give them the opportunity to do it now at this point. But it was daunting, yeah, especially like sort of being thrown in there for the final and everything else. And then KV being KV, such a legend of the club, and sort of going in there and taking over for him for the day. But I was playing in the match where he got injured, and you know, I remember the noise. It would obviously painful because I remember the noise of the injury. I think he put his foot in. The pitch was wrecked, and I think he put his foot in a divot or something like that on the pitch and went over in his ankle. But and he tells the story in your podcast with him, doesn't he, of going up to get the trophy or something. And I remember it very well, because there's no way I was going to go up and sort of like, you know, oh, here, I'm going to take this trophy from the KV, because they wouldn't let him up, because they wouldn't let the crowd over the barrier or something. And I remember pointing down and I could see him down there, and he had a big disappointed head on his shoulders. So I said no. I said to the person thing, I said, I'm not lifting that. There's the captain down there. He's so I knew what my role was for the day. I would stand in, and that was it.
Great experience, no doubt. If we rewind a couple of months earlier, February of 2004, you play a Leinster development match alongside some Greystones legends, Alex O'Sullivan, Rob Connolly, Barry Lynn was there as well. What was that? Was that kind of the precursor to the Leinster Academy? Yeah, sorry. So was that the same year? Was it? It was the same year. Yeah, if that was February 2004, you won the competition in May. Yeah, they didn't really have an academy then. They had it, or at least, yeah, they were getting their academy together. I think like the Leinster setup back in those days was pretty amateurish, and it was only really recently where they've, you know, become the professional outfit that you know today. Yeah, so that yeah, it was the days before when there was an academy there. So like that team would have been made up with guys that were essentially what today they'd be in an academy, I suppose, with a few extras there. I wasn't in the setup as such, you know, in terms of like being in an academy or anything like that. But we played a couple of games, and I trained with them over the summertime that year with I think it was a World Cup on, or there was something whereby a lot of the senior Leinster players are out. So I got to train with the Leinster setup for that summer.
which was really good experience. And then the following year.
How did you get your foot in the door there? Was it through Greg?
Ken Ging was the manager at the time of Leinster, and I'm assuming that that's what the foot in the door was. I know that he had been down watching a couple of the Greystones games, on a regular basis. So, and I think I was playing quite well, and I got a call from Ken and somebody else, and to say like, would I be interested in coming in and joining the setup to the start in terms of training wise and all that. And I said, yeah, I'd be delighted. So it was really good. Yeah. And then, so like the I think like, the senior Leinster players at the time weren't there. So it was just, I think they were off on international duty, either tours, Lions or a World Cup. I can't remember which it was. So all those senior players who would have been on the international team weren't there. And then the following year as well, Ken, maybe arising out of that, but I'd go in and train with them before some matches in order to do line-out sessions with them and stuff like that, to jump against them. I did that a good few times with them before some of their European games, which was a really good experience as well.
Wow. Do you have any particular memories of topping the league in 2005?
Yeah, well, if that's Division 3, when we won Division 3. Yeah, so and the year prior we had lost. We came second in the league, but we won the year before we were really, really good as well. So like that, Greg had coached that team, and we were really good that year as well. And we lost that league by 1 point. And we lost the league by 1 point. And if we had got another point, it's all ifs, buts, and maybes. But if we had another point, we would have blitzed. I think it was Balbriggan maybe who won that league that year. We would have. Our score difference, our points differential was huge. So we had scored and we had outplayed every single team, but we came up short by 1 point, which is really disappointing because, and I don't know why the IRFU do this, they keep on changing the sort of the format and the systems for it. So that year, only one team went up. The year before, 2 teams went up. The year after, 2 teams went up. But for some reason, that year, only 1 team went up. So I suppose we may have felt a little bit hard done by the fact that we didn't go up that year. We had won the final against Ards, as you said. And then the following year, we trounced a lot of teams. We had a really, really good side. We were well organised, well drilled, knew what we were doing, and we blitzed a hell of a lot of teams in that league that year and sort of ran away with the league, and we put up big scores against a lot of teams and stuff like that,
Yeah, I was doing scoreboard, the old timber planks.
Yeah.
89-0, 93-0, mad scores.
We had a lot of that. Like Ballina, I remember Ballina coming down to Greystones, and we put 90 points on them, I think 90 points to 0 or something, and it was just like they'd kick off and we'd score a try, they'd kick off and we'd score a try. But I remember actually their kickoffs were really, really good. The only thing that they were really good at was their restarts. So I was catching the restarts, and I get absolutely hit by the pack who were charging up. So I came in wrecked, and my body was battered, and everybody else was feeling fine. They had a walk in the park, and I was like, Jesus, I've been absolutely hammered here. But there was a good few of those sort of games where we were running away with it, so yeah, really enjoyable. But just as in, that was the mainstay of the team. The core of that team would have gone on, and played on for the next 5 or 6 years,
We flash forward a couple more seasons. We go to 06, 07. Collie McEntee comes in as head coach. He's Leinster Academy coach at the time, which shows the caliber of the coaching staff the club had in that era.
Yeah, it was Collie and Kurt, the two of them, like Collie and Kurt McQuilkin. Yeah, I remember the first day Collie and Kurt were there. I think we were coaching with Collie, and he goes, "Okay, guys, you're going to go down to the other side of the pitch, and there's a setup over there for you to do drills or something." And we went down, and we hadn't even been introduced to Kurt at this stage. And we just went down, and Kurt was there, and he had the drill all set up, whatever it was that we were doing. And he's just like, "Hi guys, I'm Kurt." And we're like, "Oh, hi Kurt, how you doing?" And it was just like straight into it, bang, this is what we're doing. You know, the decision making, it was straight up. And like, I think we were really bad at the drill at the beginning because of the fact that we hadn't actually done it like that before. You know, we hadn't had to sort of decide for ourselves what we're doing in this given drill, you know. So we were all sort of like a little bit flummoxed as to what we were doing. But it was just straight off, no introduction, boom, you're doing this. And that's the way it was, you know, with Kurt and Collie. So it was really good.
Collie would ask you to be club captain that year. How did that come about?
I don't know how it came about. I was trying to recollect how it came about. I think I'd been asked to be captain a couple of years before and the year before that, and then I was sort of saying that there's other senior players on the team, and you know, it wasn't my sort of time to be. I didn't feel like it was my time. I felt like I had plenty of time to be the club captain whenever it would happen. I wasn't in any rush, you know, to do it. I didn't really even have any goals or anything like that, as if I didn't set out to be a captain or anything like that. So there was other players there. Liam Murphy was ahead of me as well. Like, Liam was a captain one year, and I think it was Liam who had approached me as well to sort of say that would I consider doing it. And I said, well, of course I'd consider doing it, but then I suppose, yeah, the year when I did it was Collie, and I think Liam, being the senior player, sort of said to me, you know, you should do it, and I just said, yeah, fine, I'll take it on, and that was it.
It's funny, your brother was part of maybe the most successful period for the club's senior team, but certainly in the modern history of the club, you were part of the most successful period for the senior team. What was it like going out with guys like that? I mean, you look at like loose head props Jamie Hagan, who literally played for Ireland. Fullback is Dave McKechnie, who's scoring 5 tries in that game. You have Rob Connolly, you have Bull and McNaughton, John O'Byrne. Just an incredible time period for you.
It was an incredible side. It was really a really good side. And then, like, you know, there's so many more people that you could mention, but then even in terms of the depth, like, you know, you would have had a good strong J1 side. You would have had guys, if you came off injured, you know, or if you're injured for a period of time, someone who would step in would still be a really good player. And I suppose that was a really good thing about Kurt and Collie as well, being the coaches. They saw youth, and it made no difference to them. Like, you know, it was still like, you know, you're the guys who, as soon as you go out onto the pitch, are the people who are going to have to make your mind up as to what you're doing when you go out onto the pitch. So they give you that sort of freedom to do it and to express yourself and all that sort of stuff. Not that the tight five are expressing themselves too much. Like, in terms of those backs like Dave McKechnie, Stu, and everybody else, and Kean McNaughton was another one in the back line as well. It was fantastic. But all of them, you could go right through. James Power at out half, Kean, Aaron Higgs was playing brilliantly in the centre as well. Stevie Cranley at scrum half. That pack was unbelievable. Like you said, Jamie Hagan come in as he was in the Leinster Academy at the time. And Jamie, I remember him coming. He played 2 seasons in Greystones, and Jamie went on to become an international. He got a cap and Leinster pro, and I think he might be still playing professional rugby.
I looked it up. Yeah, I think he is. Yeah.
He was a great guy. Jamie was a great character as well, a really good guy. And he was only 20 when he came out. He had just won the Grand Slam with the Irish under 20s when he came out to us. But Collie had got Jamie to come out to us. He's from Balbriggan originally, and Jamie came out and played a match. We were playing a match against Old Belvedere, and I was in the second row, and we were getting killed in the scrums against Old Belvedere. It was in Anglesey Road, and the prop who I was scrummaging behind, we subbed him off. Jamie was supposed to start the match, but he was late, so he was put on the bench. But he came on, I'd say, with half an hour into the match, he came on, and the prop I was scrummaging behind went off. And I just remember being killed in the scrums, and I remember thinking, oh, who's this Jamie guy coming on? I'd never met him before. I hadn't heard of him. And I thought he was going to get killed. I was just like, he was only under 20, or at least he was just off under 20s or something. I was like, oh no, we're getting killed here. He's going to get absolutely minced. Anyway, Jamie comes in, first scrum, boom, we start driving Belvedere back on the scrum, and first scrum, and I was like, Jesus, who the hell is this guy? You know, he's unbelievable. But he was brilliant, and he got better and better and better every match almost. And I remember Collie McEntee talking about him, like, you know, that he's he was continuously progressing in terms of his work in the gym and in the academy. He was, hitting personal bests, every week almost, and the work that he put in, and that was brilliant for other people to see. The effort and the work that these guys were putting into their game and the dedication that they had was rubbed off on a lot of the
contagious,
other players who were brilliant.
You spoke about it a little bit just there. Your rivalry that season with Old Belvedere. They would play. They'd beat us in Dr. Hickey Park. Drop goal in the last play of the game by Richie Murphy. But you'd end up beating them in the final of the AIL.
That's right.
Tell me about that match.
Well, there's the final, and I suppose the build up to all of that wasn't just the day or whatever meeting in the final. The build, we had met them so many times. We played them in the Leinster Senior Cup at the beginning of that season, in the quarterfinals of the Leinster Senior Cup, and we lost to them by a point. And we should have won that match. And I think we missed quite a number of kicks at goal. We should have won. And Belleville went on to win the Leinster Senior Cup, something that Greystones have never done. The Greystones never won that Leinster Senior Cup. Belleville won it that year. And then we played them in the league. We played them in a friendly. Even the season before, we had played them 2 or 3 times. And every time we played them, there was only ever a point or 2 points between us. There was never any more. We'd either beat them by a point or 2, or they beat us by a point or 2. And they were always really tough, hard games and really well played and hard fought matches. But there was only ever a point or 2 between us. And then down in that game in Dr. Hickey Park, which was they were top of the table, we were second. And I was reading in one of the programs about that match. It was 6 minutes into injury time. We were beating them 16-15 or 16-14. Richie Murphy had come off the bench. Andy Dunn, I think, was the out half on that day. Richie Murphy came off the bench and slotted a kick from 45, 50 yards to beat us. And it was heartbreaking, that match. So anyway, the league goes on. We lose that match after that disappointment. But then we go and we meet them in the final. And the match itself we were all riled up, ready to go. We really wanted to win it. And it was a really tough match. It was a really hot day. It was played in St. Mary's Ground, Templeville Road. And it was a really hot day, I remember. And I never really played too well in the heat. I was more accustomed to slow, soggy, wet and wind. It was always I played better in those conditions. But it was just tit for tat. We got penalised. We got gave away stupid penalties. I remember, and it was something like Andy Dunn again was playing for them and he was kicking really well. And I remember we gave away a stupid scrum penalty and then we said something back to the ref and the ref marched us forward 10 yards and it brought it within kicking range. So we were being really stupid like that. And anyway, but we fought really hard. We played some really good rugby. I remember the pack were really, really good that day. And I think it might have been 13 all full time. I remember being down at the bottom of a ruck and the captain for the Belleville side was down at the bottom of the ruck with me, and we heard the referee's final whistle going, and I remember thinking, I think I said it to him, do you want to toss a coin for this, because I don't play another half an hour, because we were both wrecked. So we went into extra time, and we blitzed them in extra time. It was like a different game. Extra time was a different match almost to the match that had just gone on for the 80 minutes. We scored, I think, 3 tries. Darren McKenna, who was playing a fullback. And sorry, to go back to that point about our squad, there's a really, really good squad player, Darren McKenna. He came out and played with us for a year. He came from UCT. He was an outstanding player. Was kind of like on the periphery and came in for this match and scored an unbelievable try. But that's the sort of quality that you have that no one really knows about that, or that ever really played for Greystones. But he comes on and plays a crucial role in the final that day. Rob Connolly got a try, Stevie Cranley got a try, and we blitzed them in the extra time. And Richie Murphy, to go back to Richie scoring that wonderful drop kick that he did against us, he missed one in front of the sticks almost. It was just to the right of the posts. It was a conversion of one of their tries and he had missed it, and we kind of thought that it was our lucky day. It must be our lucky day, the fact that Richie had missed that kick. from right in front of the post. And I think a few of the guys, as they were running up past him, let him know about it as well. So, but it was brilliant. It was really good. It was really good, hard fought match against Belva.
Yeah, I think it's the zenith of the club's recent history. It's the highest peak that we'd reach. The next season, after 14-year wait, we're back in Division 1 of the AIL. Collie asks you to be club captain a second year in a row. It really wasn't a done thing at the time. I mean, I think you have to go all the way back maybe 15, 20 years earlier to Spud Murphy before you find someone that did 2 consecutive years. Do you remember what the situation was there? It's a nice accolade to have.
No, Collie just assumed I was going to take on the role of captaincy. He was staying on. He said to me about captain. It was very brief. Do you want to be captain? Yeah, sure, fine. He said you could be captain for the club for the next foreseeable future if you want to be. And he wanted me to be captain again that year, and that was it. Another good thing about Collie as well, and his coaching too, he was very much. I would ask him, I remember asking him about it in the first year I was captain. I was sort of like, I'd have a discussion with him about it and saying, is there anything else that you want from me as a captain? Like, should I be doing something else? Or should I be doing something differently or anything? But Collie wanted to be, the only thing he sort of said to me was like, you can question me more, in terms of like, what I'm doing, you can ask questions of me, which I thought was a really good thing as well. And the funny thing was like, I didn't have any questions for Collie whatsoever. Everything he was doing was absolutely fine. So I wasn't questioning him or his methods or anything like that. But it was just interesting to note that he was somebody who wanted to be challenged himself as a coach, from his captain and allow the players as well sort of, have an input that way. But so for the second year then, he just asked me, and it was just a continuation of what went on before.
We reached the dizzying heights of Division 1, as I said. Unfortunately, it wouldn't really last that long. What happened, do you think? I mean, like Belvedere were able to kick on because they went up with us. Belvedere were able to kick on and they won.
Sorry to cut across you, but I have to give a special mention to Stu Abbott for that year for when I was in Division 1. I got injured in the summer between those 2 years. I got in. Probably the beginning of my knee problems. I had 2 operations that year on my knees. But Stu Abbott took over the captaincy in my absence when I was injured, and he did a really, really, really good job that year. And he was not only was he a really good captain, and I don't think he got credit for his captaincy role, but he was also brilliant on the pitch. I thought he was our best player that year when we were in Division 1. But sorry, I just needed to mention that to you because he was probably more of a captain than I was that year. But sorry, go on. I interrupted you.
No, you're okay. I don't know where I was. Oh,
you were talking
Belvedere were able to kick on, and they won the AIL in 2011. They won Division 1. Why were Greystones not able to keep up with that pace?
Yeah, it was really disappointing to see that, and because you really sort of benchmarked yourself against Belvedere to a certain extent. The fact that we've been playing alongside them for so long, and we've been competing with them for so long, and we've been so close in terms of our quality for so long. And then once we got up into Division 1, it was like our squad was depleted. Our squad wasn't as good as it was when we were in Division 2. And you could see Belvedere going on and becoming AIL Division 1 champions, which was unbelievable. But it was a little bit hard to take to see them doing well and us regressing and going back down the division.
Yeah, it's funny because sorry, go ahead.
No, it was just sad to see, but it was hard to take.
Yeah, it's funny because there was a lot of players that came in that were of pretty good standard. I mean, Dan Kenny comes in, Connor Cleary comes in, Jason Harris Wright, John Downey. I mean, all guys that did and could have played professionally. But I feel that you were there, you'll be able to answer. I feel Rob Connolly was a big loss.
For sure. Rob was brilliant for so many years there. Rob was the mainstay and very much a driving force about how good we were. Rob was also ultra competitive too, like, you know, so I think in order for you to win leagues and matches, you need that competitiveness, you know, and somebody to drive you to actually win a league. It's a really, really tough thing to do. And Rob certainly wanted to do that, and he had that competitiveness in him to do it. And he was a massive loss when he went, huge loss. He was some athlete as well, you know, and he, like, as in, you talk about in football, you have your strikers who bring you X amount of goals every season. Like, Rob is somebody who would have given you X amount of tries, you know. You're guaranteed a try from Rob absolutely in every game, and especially in that Division 3 season, Rob would just run rampage. But he was a tough player too, so he was a huge loss. But in terms of you know, those players that you talked about there who were coming in and who were good players, and they really were. But I suppose maybe there wasn't a mix maybe of youth and more senior players, and that was the reason. Perhaps I don't know. I think certainly Belvedere had their quality in their squad. They certainly bolstered their squad, and perhaps we didn't. We sort of missed it for 1 year. I think we missed it for 1 year. And it just took its toll, and we went straight back down. Like, perhaps if it was the case that we stayed up for that 1 year, like we had 4 wins that year against, you know, Gary Owen, we beat at home, Rock we had Dungannon, we had some good wins, and we were close in other games where we only missed out by a point or two. And if we hung on for that year,
different story.
It could have been, but then again, ifs, buts, and maybes again. You know, you either do it. No, and we didn't do it.
2009, I think I have it right. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Is your first retirement? You're only 28 years old. What happened?
I had 2 operations on my knees. My knees basically were just giving way every time I go out to play or train. I tear the cartilage in my knee. I had the best part of it removed on my left knee, and then my right knee, it started to tear every time. So every time I'd go out and play, my knee would the cartilage would tear. And I was getting to the point where I remember, like, being at home and getting up off the couch or something like that, or standing up from the kitchen table, and I'd tear my cartilage, and my knee would pop out, or it was sort of I'd be lying in bed some nights, and it would just the weight of my lower leg against my upper leg, it would just pop out, and it was just getting to the point where it was just getting ridiculous. So I just made the decision, and I made the decision on just at the beginning. I went down and trained, I think, in the August and into the September. I might have been there for the first 2 weeks of September. And I just decided, no, that's it. I'm not going through another year of more trouble with my knees.
You do a little bit of coaching.
I'm still going through the troubles. I've had another surgery only 6 months ago. I'm in rehab again, still from it.
No way, geez.
Yeah.
It lasts forever. Yeah. You a short window of playing, and then you pay for it for the rest of your life, don't you?
Yeah.
You do a little bit of coaching with the J1s and under 20s after your initial retirement, but the second chapter opens when you decide to come back to play junior rugby. What led to that decision?
What led to the decision? Alcohol, probably. Niall Savage. When I finished playing, I went down, and I sort of I was manager, sort of, you know, the club where they needed, like they always do, just, you know, in terms of volunteers going in and coaching or whatever else they got. I managed with the under 20s, and then I ended up taking over the coaching with them for the I think the last quarter of the season, and it was disappointing. We didn't have numbers for our 20s, and I always just found it a real disappointment that we didn't have those numbers down for the 20s, because I just thought that, you know, I took it for granted that Greystones always had a really strong 20s setup, because it was always the case when I was growing up that they had a really strong 20 setup, and I remember the Macquarie Cup match that we played against Belvedere, and it was probably the best match that 20s team played that year. But we were ringing people the morning of the 20s Macquarie's Cup match to try and get them down to play, to be on the bench. We didn't have a full bench for a Macquarie Cup game. So, but I found the experience of coaching it was a lot different in any way, shape or form to play, and it was a lot more difficult, I felt, like in terms of trying to manage, a whole team, as opposed to just being able to look after yourself and your own game. Suddenly you're thrust into it whereby you're trying to manage a squad full of players and dealing with all of that. But sorry, so anyway, I did that, but then I didn't progress with any coaching. I didn't really have too much of an interest in doing it after that. But yeah, I over a few drinks at a bar, Niall Savage trying to get a glory team back together. I said to him, I'll give it a shot, and I ended up going down, really enjoying it, and bringing, we ended up having this really, really good side for that year. I had my troubles again with my legs. I sort of set out a few rules to Niall that I wasn't going to be doing any warm-ups or anything like that, and I'd be mainly on the bench, and he can bring me on and everything else like that. But it was a really good year. Yeah.
It's funny on that. I actually played your first match back, which you may not remember. It was a J3 Moran Cup quarter-final against Wesley. And I forget who was captain. It was Brian O'Sullivan or Collie Taylor. Yeah. And you had said, emphatically, like, I am on the bench and it's non-negotiable. And Collie was saying, oh, yeah, no problem. But he knew all along that Dara Tyrrell wasn't going to be showing up until half time or something like that. So in the dressing room, 30 seconds before kickoff, he says, McGann, you're starting.
Bigger fool me falling for it in the first place.
My overriding memory is Paul Lennon saying, "This stinks of Greystones."
Yeah. Where was that match then in Dr. Hickey Park?
Yeah, it was in Greystones. Yeah.
Was it under lights?
Yeah.
And I also remember playing. Yeah, I remember playing it. And what position were you playing?
Scrum half.
It was probably you then. I remember someone running off the back of a ruck or something, and in my mind I was like, yeah, I'm going to support you, and I'll be on your shoulder or something like that. And you just took off, and I couldn't keep up with you at all. And
it was probably somebody else if it involves taking off. But I
know what my limitations are now. I certainly, not that I was ever one for having any pace, but Jesus, I was like way behind you.
Well, you'd moved down then to the J4s that season, and you'd go on a pretty good cup run. You got to the final. It was against Barnhall in Greystones, which unfortunately we lost, Winters Cup final. But I think it's the next season that the J4 Invincibles.
Is that the match, would you believe, where Niall Savage had bottles of champagne in the trade room beforehand and mentioned that he's going to open these, and this was before the match he ever even kicked off?
Quite likely. I also remember in that game, we lost. Greystones lost anyway, and there was a team photo of the losing team, Greystones, and Savo says, "Can we ask Barnhall for a lend of the cup just for the photo?"
Yeah.
But it broke tension, and everyone, was in better form then, But it's the next season the famed J4 Invincibles were born. Must have been one of your more enjoyable years of rugby, even though you'd been to the heights of AIL.
Oh, it was brilliant. And you see, that's the whole thing about clubs and club rugby and everything else like that. And I go back to the J1 side that I played on when I was coming up off the under-20s. That was a really good team that I really enjoyed playing rugby on as well. And then, but that J4 side, yeah, for sure, it was absolutely outstanding. And that's why I think anyone who is playing senior rugby and they can go down and play junior rugby, they should definitely take the opportunity and do it. And I go back again to the good teams that I've played on. It's all about getting a team together and building a team and going out and trying to achieve something. So like for the J4s, we had a really good unit. We had a really good team. We sort of enjoyed our rugby, and we ended up, we sort of set it out that, we had lost to Barnhall the year before in the final. So we were like, right, we're going to go out and we're going to win this league. And, one of the big grudge matches would have been the Barnhall match that we would have played them, the same guys again. The following year, we went down to Barnhall and we played them down there, and we had a great win. And it was a real grudge match to sort of, but that was the thing about the team, that we had generated a really good team ethos there. And the one thing I would always be saying to Savo, because Savo would always be bigging us up and telling us, I was like, Savo, you're the guy who brought the champagne in the changing room the year before. And I said, don't you be telling us anything or getting ahead of yourself. We've won nothing yet until we got a medal around our neck. We've won nothing. So we ended up getting a medal around our neck at the end of the year anyway. So it was really good.
You touched on it a little bit there, encouraging guys if they can still play, seniors to come down. It's something I'd be the biggest advocate for it. I mean, you look, it used to be the done thing. I mean, you go all the way back, to Sonny Kenny. Greg talked about it. Sonny Kenny comes back to play J3s. Everyone wants to play. Cavey did it. He came back. Yeah. You did it. When you put your name in the hat for junior rugby, everyone wants to play. Rona Willis shows up. Dave McKechnie shows up all of a sudden, and Niall McCarthy shows up. It seems to have fallen away a little bit. Now, Simon Malone has done it this year and has been the standout player for the J4s in his late 30s. But
and there you go with Simon Malone. Simon Malone will bring back a few players too, and it's just those few players. It's just like if you get 3 or 4, that's all you really need, and then you've got the good bones of a good squad or a good team there, and you can go from there. But anybody who can do it should do it, and it goes back again. You go back to when you're talking about Sonny Kenny and everybody else going down and playing down on the lower levels when they're finished, and nobody really doing it as much anymore. Nobody, as in rugby is becoming a non-participation sport. It's more of a spectator sport whereby people are going and watching rugby and watching the professional setups as opposed to either watching Greystones or, more importantly, playing the game. And it doesn't really matter what level you're necessarily playing at, but it's sad to see the fact that not as many people are participating in playing the game. But certainly, if you've been playing for the senior team, you should drop down. You'll have great. It's completely just the social side of things, and we had Rodolfo bringing up red wine and meats and everything else, and Savo producing loads of booze as well. And I don't think the opposition team used to like seeing us coming up, but they think we're the Lynch with our wine and fancy food and everything else like that. But that's what it's all about, So anybody who's should try and get down and play junior rugby if they can.
Absolutely. Andrew Keeley, I'm looking at you.
He'll be on the seniors for another 10 years.
Sorry?
He'll be on the seniors for another 10 years though.
Yeah. Well, that is another thing, in fairness. Like, I think guys are you'd finished at 28. I think Cavey finished at 27, 28 as well. I mean, guys do hang on a little bit longer. I mean, look at Dan Kenny, one of the standout players in the first, and
Rob Connolly.
He'll be 34. Rob Connolly, 40 maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Rob Connolly, you're younger than me, and he's still playing senior. Last season.
Yeah.
So I probably would have played the first AIL match that Rob played in. And here's me absolutely crocked playing for the AIL, still playing away at 40, Because so if he can, certainly plays seniors as long as he can.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about the mini setup now. What's old is new again. You were once going down there yourself, and now your kids are involved. Is that right?
Coming full circle, yeah. So I'm down there with the under 10s. I have 2 boys, Cormac and Christian. I have a girl as well, but she's 5. Joy, and they play Gaelic football, they play soccer, they play rugby. So it's an amazing setup down there. There was a photograph, the one that I mentioned earlier, that when we were under 7s or something in Terranure, and I took a photograph of our team at under 7s as well when we were in Terranure in Lakelands. And there's around 40 kids or 50 kids, in the photograph that I took of the kids that we're coaching. And, so you've gone from when we were under 7s, there was only like 8 or 9 of us. So now 50. I think the under 11s or under 12s, a couple of years ahead of us, they have 80 kids or something down there every Sunday morning for just for that team. So it's an amazing setup, and Darren McGuire, Merv McGuire, they're the ones who are sort of running our under 10s, and it's an amazing thing. It's a military operation every Sunday morning just to try and get everything organised, and they do an amazing job. We had a table quiz last Friday night where we raised over 3.5 grand, and part of that's going to the Seagulls and stuff. So there's a great input from parents, from coaches, from Merv and Darren who are organising it all. But it has its downsides as well, I have to say, in terms of the numbers, in terms of getting some consistency in a team and trying to progress and play together, because every week you're sort of playing with somebody different. So a downside to it is that you don't get that consistency in a team that you can progress week on week. But it's a brilliant setup, and Greystones has one of the biggest mini rugby sections in the country. And again, going back to player participation, if you see the amount of kids down there on a Sunday morning, it doesn't always necessarily translate into the senior setup that you're getting all those players who are remaining in Greystones.
Give me your favourite Greystones Rugby Club memory.
Favorite, yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that question. I was kind of trying to think about like what my favorite Greystones Rugby Club memory is, and I'm going to come at it from a purely sort of playing perspective. And you know, yeah, there's been those wins that we've had in terms of winning finals and all that sort of stuff, and J4 finals and leagues and everything else like that. But I think like what I really enjoyed about my time playing rugby in Greystones was a lot to do with, you know, the training sessions, being in the changing room with everybody, the camaraderie you have between everybody, and just I remember a match. I suppose if I can pick one match, I suppose that I really enjoyed the most was a match that we played down in Highfield, and it was sort of at the beginning of that season that we won the Division 2, and I don't think we necessarily knew how good we were at that stage. Not that much rugby was played on this particular day, but we didn't necessarily know how tough we were or whether or not we had the credentials to win the league. But we went down to Highfield, and it was an absolutely miserable day. And Highfield, I think at that stage might have been top of the table, and we were second, and we wanted to go down and beat them in order that we could jump ahead of them. It was a miserable day. It was like a waterlogged pitch. We knew within a minute or two of the warm-up that like you're not going to be playing much rugby. Every line-out's going to be down to 2 straight up. If a scrum collapses, you'll be worried about the front row drowning. So anyway, we scored a try early on in the match. In the first 10 or 15 minutes, Stuart Abbott scored a try, and we basically didn't play any rugby. You just had to defend and defend and defend. And if we got the ball, I remember saying, if you get the ball, hoof it up the pitch. There's no point in playing rugby in this sort of conditions. And when I was reading the program there, one of the programs that you gave me, there was a couple of quotes about the match as well. I didn't think anybody would have remembered this because it wasn't exactly a running rugby. Dave McKechnie wasn't running up the pitch scoring loads of tries, or Rob Conley or anything like that. It was like a 1-try match. But there was a couple of quotes. Barry Keeley, I think, had called it the best Greystones display in adverse conditions that he's ever witnessed. And somebody else said it was Greystones' best ever defence display that they'd ever seen, and all this sort of stuff. And I remember coming off the pitch that day, we eventually ended up winning by just a few points, but I remember coming off the pitch and getting cheered by the crowd that were down there, the Greystones crowd that were down there. They really acknowledged the fact that it was a really, really hard fought match, and it kind of kicked on our season, and we went on, and it gave us loads of confidence that, like, you know, we just beaten a really tough Highfield team down there in those conditions, and we were able to put it up to them. I don't think Highfield thought that we were going to do it, but and everybody sort of said, yeah, this Greystones team are really good. So if I was to pick one of the great Greystones moments, it was probably coming off the pitch up to the changing room after that match, absolutely drowned, and just that sense of being in a team that has just had a really, really, really hard fought victory, and that's what it was about.
Yeah, can't beat it. Who's the best player you played with, Greystones Rugby Club?
Again, I knew that question was coming, and I kind of like had a short list of different players, honourable mentions. There's loads of them, and it was really hard for me to pick one. You know, you have these sort of players that came in, like MJ Smith. If you remember MJ, do you remember MJ, the out half? He was outstanding out half, and he was just technically really good. I remember playing a match with him where he came off the bench, and we had been beating the team. I think it was Nace we were playing against, and I didn't understand how we were dominating them on the pitch, but I didn't understand how we weren't dominating them on the scoreboard. I think we never pulled away from them. And MJ came on, and I think he had been injured or something. He was coming back into the team or something like that. And when he was on, we scored 4 tries within I think 10 minutes or something like that. And it was just all in the back line. It was all him just dictating what the moves were in the back line. And we just opened up Nace immediately. And I really saw how good he was that day. He had sat on the bench for the Springboks as well. But anyway, there was loads of different players. When I first was coming onto the team, like, you know, you had Conor McNaughton, who was there, who had just been, he was an international player with the Ireland under-20s. He was an outstanding centre. You had, like, you know, then later on his brother would have come along. You had Cormac and Keane and Nabil, who I played with as well. All four of the McNaughtons are really, really good players. Obviously, Dave McKechnie, Stuart O'Connell. Dave McKechnie was outstanding as well. The amount of tries that he scored out of nothing, Dave really just was able to produce something out of nothing. And I think someone else remarked on a try that he scored. I think it might have been Cavey up in Ards. Did Cavey mention that try?
Under his own posts.
Under his own post. I got up from the scrum. So Cavey was in the back line, but I got up from the scrum. It was a scrum. It was our scrum on our 5-yard line. And the ball was passed out, and I think something happened with the out half, and it was shuffled on, and it was on the ground. And Dave picked the ball up under the posts in his own try line, behind his own try line. And I remember stopping running and sort of going, okay, I'm going to have to, you know, it's going to be a 5-meter scrum to Ards because Dave's going to touch the ball down. And next thing, he had around 4 or 5 players around him, and I don't know what he did or how he did it, but he just moved and it was gone. He didn't know when he touched them, and he had gone up the pitch, and it cut a long story short, we ended up scoring a try from it. So Dave was unbelievable. But and then, like, you know, later on when I was, you know, with those younger fellas who were coming up, you would have had, Jamie Hagan as well was outstanding as a prop. You would have had Jason Harris-Wright, who was coming into the team, was outstanding. John Downey was also a really, really good player. Danny Kenny, I remember watching Danny Kenny when we were training one time, and he was as fast as Dave McKechnie. We were doing a sprinting drill, and I remember thinking, Jesus, he's 17 and a half or 18 stone. He's 6'5", and he's as fast as Dave McKechnie. I was like, geez, he could go all the way. He was another really, really good player. But if I was to pick someone, I'd pick Rob. Rob and myself are the same age. Sorry, he was a year younger than I was, but it was kind of like I felt like I went up with Rob, and we were on the senior team all together for a long time. And so I got to sort of play with him a lot, watch him a lot, see him training a lot. And he was outstanding. He'd like, just his athleticism, you know, like that he's playing in the centre at the moment. The fact that he's still playing at the moment just shows you what sort of an athlete he is. Like, my body's in Rob is still going strong. Another mention I would sort of say as well, like, I remember playing with Richie as well, Richie Murphy, and when he was he played out half on the first season I think I played seniors, or the second season I played seniors. And Richie is the sort of player as well who'd win you a match on his own. You know, you'd go, I remember playing a match or two where you'd come off and you go, God, we were awful there, you know, should have been beaten out the gate. But you'd come off having won because Richie would have kicked all the kicks from everywhere. You know, you get beaten up front, and Richie would just see any. And we played a match against Skerries, and it was an awful match. Home Patrick, I think, is the name of their ground, is it? And Richie, we had to win. We had to go out and beat Skerries if we wanted to win the league. And I remember we played awful, and we shouldn't have won. And but Richie, just anything that was within 50 yards, Richie put over the post, and we ended up coming up winning and win the league. Yes.
World is oyster now as well. You might be seeing him as a head coach of Ireland one day.
Yeah. Hopefully that'll be fantastic. Yeah. It'll be brilliant.
Well, we reached the end of the road there, McGann. Thanks so much for coming on. It's been a really fascinating insight. Love talking to you.
Thanks for having me. I think I heard you might have had Peter Muller and Nick Popwell on before me, so that meant I could just gloss over the World Cup wins and the Lions tours. I didn't have to talk too much about that.
But no, listen, fantastic having you on. Thanks so much for coming out. I think Greg Lynch told me that you're one of the best 2 second rows alongside Brian Rigney to ever play for the club. If that's not as big an endorsement as somebody can get, then I don't know what is. Thanks so much, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Lovely compliment, but I wouldn't rate myself that highly now. But lovely compliment to hear.
Well, no one's going to tell Greg he's wrong anyway.
Well, that's true, actually. Yeah, very true. Very true.
Again, thanks so much. I love
Thanks,
that. That's
Murphy,
fantastic.
appreciate it.
Have a great day. Cheers. We'll chat to you again. Bye bye.